Okay, everyone. I clearly am not a night owl. Clearly, I am not. Once again, I have overslept. So I am so sorry, but I am here now. So thank you for your patience and for waiting. So let's see here. All right. So let's see. Hi, Tamara. Hi, Robin. How are you guys doing? I hope you can see the babies well enough. We've got Oink again, and we have Raven, and we have Poo Poo and Sasha. I hope they can be seen well enough for the story tonight. How are you guys doing? Thank you. Oh boy, it's been feeling like it's like 2 days later than what it really is every day for this week. And I guess that's a good feeling. But now I'll go ahead and get started. Before I get started, let me share the book. I'm going to share the book, and in case anybody wants to check this book out from the library, it is called, let's see, let's make sure the book can be seen first. It is called The Girl with the Glass Bird. It's kind of a little lopsided there. And the author is Esme Kerr. Kerr. I have put it inside of the description in case anyone wants to check it out at their local library, because there are 29 chapters, and we will not be, looks like there's 31 chapters, and we will not be getting through all chapters. I will try my best to read at least three more chapters, for this last session, for this last reading session. And let's see, we started off with chapter 5, and we went all the way to, I believe, chapter, let's see here, 7. Yes, that's what we did. So, should be chapter 8 or 9. Let's see, I'll read the last sentence from chapter 8. Okay, yes. So from chapter 8, that's when Edie had gotten caught in the hallway with the box, with the shoe box, because her cell phone was in there. And Matron had told Edie to give it to her, but she wouldn't. Then the headmistress, Miss Forenthgay, came along, and Fotheringay came along and had Edie give the box to her. So let's pick up from there with chapter 9, Acting Up. Edie rose to a day of great confusion. Every, oh, give me just a moment here. Just a moment. Yeah, okay. Edie rose to a day of great confusion. Every event was announced by a loud bell. which would be followed by a rush of girls marching up and down the stairs and corridors. Edie was quite bewildered by so much clanging, and soon she was hearing bells echoing in her head, even when there was none ringing. "You're in my form, York," Sally explained as everyone made their way to the classrooms after breakfast. "It used to be known as 1B until Fathy read us Richard III and discovered none of us knew about the Wars of the Roses. Anastasia Anastasia's with us too, and Phoebe, but Alice is in Lancaster, so we won't have any lessons with her except games." "It suits me. Alice has become a bit of a prig since she was made form prefect. And of course, we're lucky having Miss Winifred. And we're even luckier that we haven't got Fathy for Latin like the other class does." "Don't you like her?" Edie wondered, not mentioning that she was to have her own private tutorials. "Oh, I don't know. She's just weird," Sally said. "All those funny clothes and not brushing her hair and everything. And you should see her when she goes for walks. She's got a filthy old tweed jacket she always wears, just like a tramp. And sometimes she turns up at assembly wearing walking boots. Anyway, you've met her. Didn't you think she was a bit weird?" Edie wondered if Sally ever got tired of using that word. She makes me really nervous," Sally went on emphatically. "She always appears out of nowhere, just when you're doing something you shouldn't." Sally tossed back her head and gave a poor imitation of Miss Fotheringay's low, lilting voice. "What's that you have there, Sally? Ah, a letter. How interesting, Sally. Who's it from? She's always poking her nose into things. She wants us to tell her everything." Edie frowned, thinking of her shoebox. Do you tell her things?" "No way," Sally replied, "but she finds out all the same. Did she give you the in loco parentis speech? It's her excuse for giving us no privacy at all. Fathy sends the man snooping around the dormitories when we're not there. She even does it herself sometimes. I went back to our dorm a couple of weeks ago at break time because I'd forgotten something, and Fathy was coming out." "What had she been doing?" Sally shrugged. "A drawer search, I suppose." Edie tried to imagine Miss Fotheringay alone in the dormitory, searching through the bedside tables, but instead she kept seeing Miss Fotheringay's black cat, the tea laid out by the fire in her study, and her calm, inscrutable face. "And best friends are strictly against the rules," Sally went on in a mocking voice. "Fathy hates it when anyone gets too close to anyone else." "But there can't be a rule against friendship." Sally made a face. "Fathy can have rules against anything, you'll learn. Anyway, she doesn't have a rule against friendship, just a general rule suspicion of best friendship." "Have you met Belinda and Rose yet?" she asked excitedly. "They're both in our class, and they're totally inseparable. They knew each other from out of school, and neither of them bothers much with anyone else. Fathy's furious about it. She tried to put them in different dormitories after half term, but their mothers complained. They didn't see anything wrong with their daughters being best friends, so Fatih had to climb down for once. "This is us," Sally announced then, and pushed open a door bearing a picture of a white rose. It led into a lofty classroom with a sloping ceiling and a tall, arched window with panes of colored glass. There were rows of wooden desks with opening lids and a large old-fashioned blackboard specked with green light from the window. Edie thought how different it looked from the classrooms at her last school, with their shared plastic tables and whiteboards. The room was full of girls, all talking and clattering their desk lids. "You're here," Sally said, pointing Edie to a desk between hers and Anastasia's in the front row. "It's the worst place, of course, right under the mistress's nose. Anastasia and I used to be in the back row, but Miss Winifred wanted to keep a closer eye on us." Edie could see why Miss Winifred might want to keep a closer eye on Sally, who never stopped talking. But why had she moved Anastasia, who seemed so quiet? "Hello, are you the new girl? I'm Belinda," came a voice from behind them, and Edie turned around to see a fat, friendly-looking girl with thick blonde bunches sprouting around a smiling face. "And this is Rose," she added, turning to a slight but striking girl at the desk next to her, with curly black hair and wide, slightly startled-looking green eyes. It struck Edie that there was something protective in Belinda's manner. Rose smiled at Edie shyly. "You should watch out with Sally in charge of you," Belinda went on teasingly. "She managed to get herself gated before the rest of us had even unpacked." "Oh, shut up," Sally replied good-naturedly. "I haven't been in trouble for at least 2 weeks. And you should have seen my half-term report. Miss Winifred said—" Before she could finish, a bell clanged and everyone fell into their seats like in a game of musical chairs. Then the door opened and Miss Winifred made her entrance. She wore a long, swirling red skirt that seemed to float her to the front of the class, where she dropped a pile of exercise books on her desk. "Good morning, girls." "Good morning, Miss Winifred," the class replied, rising to its feet, but Anastasia remained seated, searching for something in her desk. "Good morning, girls," Miss Winifred repeated in a playful tone, but Anastasia went on scrabbling about among her books. Her head was ducked behind her desk lid, and she seemed unaware the mistress had entered the room. Edie wondered why Phoebe, who was on the other side of Anastasia, didn't prod her, and wondered if she should. An expectant giggle rippled round the class. "You must be hiding something very interesting, Anastasia," Miss Winifred said, smiling down at her over the desk lid. "Perhaps you might show us." Anastasia looked up with a fright. "No, I'm not hiding anything. I've lost something." The girls laughed again, as if sharing a private joke, but Miss Winifred seemed concerned. "Lost something? Not your watch again, I hope." "No, it's Bertie. Someone must have taken. I didn't mean—" Anastasia faltered, as if suddenly wishing she could take the words back. "Your glass bird?" Miss Winifred repeated, her voice shocked. "Yes," said Anastasia, with a startled look. "I put Bertie in my desk before breakfast this morning. I always bring it in when we've got a test for good luck, you see. And we've got a spelling test this afternoon, so—" "Of course I quite see," Miss Winifred said softly, but the class rocked with laughter, as if it saw something quite different. "Girls," Miss Winifred said sternly, Please, this is an extremely serious matter. Has anyone seen Bertie? There was twittering, but no one spoke. But, but someone must have taken it, moved it, Anastasia protested, turning crimson. It was here. I swear it was, and now it's gone. Like the homework you thought had been stolen before half-term and the watch that disappeared during lacrosse, Phoebe said gleefully, prompting another burst of laughter from the class. Everyone seemed to be enjoying a familiar joke. Even Miss Winifred's face betrayed the briefest flicker of a smile. Please, she said, raising a hand for quiet. Anastasia, dear, the bird was a piece of Stolanov crystal, I believe. I am sure Miss Fotheringay would take something of this nature very seriously indeed. Would you like to go and report it to her now? No, Anastasia whispered. Good. In that case, we shall salvage what remains of our math lesson. Sit down, girls, and open your books at page 22. Everyone sat down and the math lesson began, but Edie did not even try to concentrate on the complicated-looking sums being scrawled across the blackboard. She was watching Anastasia out of the corner of her eye, thinking how wretched she looked. Then she glanced again at Phoebe, whose face had worn a look of spiteful scorn throughout Miss Winifred's interrogation. It was clear that Anastasia's accusations of thieving had become a well-rehearsed joke among the first years, and the evidence pointed to her being very absent-minded, but Edie recalled her tidiness in the dormitory and felt puzzled. It didn't make sense that she should lose things so often. How are you getting on, Edith? Edie looked up to see Miss Winifred peering at her. She expected a telling off, but when the mistress saw she had completed none of her sums, she stayed by her desk and patiently explained everything all over again. Edie forced herself to listen, and after a few minutes she picked up a dim idea of what she was supposed to do. I think you have the makings of a perfectly respectable mathematician, Edith, the teacher said at last, and Edie felt a glow of pleasure. See what I mean about Miss Winifred, Sally whispered, as they filed out to their next lesson. She's lovely, isn't she? I do like her clothes, don't you? And imagine being that tall and thin. I'd give up cake and sweets right now if I thought I could grow up to be as tall and thin as that. But my mother says I'll never be thin because I'm not that build. It was strange about Anastasia's bird, Edie said. Oh, that. It will just be another false alarm. Whenever she loses something, she complains it's been stolen. Sometimes I think she does it on purpose to try and get us into trouble. You can see that's what Miss Winifred thinks. She tries to be nice about it, but I reckon her patience is running out. Everyone's fed up with Anastasia. The rest of the day passed in a blur of lessons and bells, and Edie found it took all her concentration just to be in the right place at the right time. At her primary school, all the classes had taken place in the same room, but at Knights Haddon, every subject was taught in a different part of the school, miles from the last. Edie was glad to be able to tag along after Sally. After supper, she returned to the dormitory to write to Cousin Charles. She knew she had to tell him about her cell phone being confiscated. By the time he got her letter, he'd have no word from her for 3 days. She wondered if he had tried to ring her, and imagined the phone vibrating impatiently on Miss Fotheringay's desk. But as she was beginning her letter, Alice and Anastasia walked in. "There you are, Edie. We've been looking for you," Alice said excitedly. "It's time for the play auditions. They're starting now, in the lower school common room." "All right," Edie said, slipping the letter into the drawer of her bedside table. "Wait for me," said Anastasia, arranging her hair in the mirror. Edie watched her, intrigued, noticing for the first time the little emerald beads in her headband and the initials AS beautifully engraved on her silver back brush. There was something strangely childlike about the way Anastasia pulled the brush through her hair, as if she were playing with a doll. "Oh, come on, Anastasia," Alice teased. "You don't need to get all spruced up. You're not trying out for Hollywood." Anastasia smiled, but Edie could see she had been crying. She supposed it was about the glass bird, but then, "Oh," Anastasia said suddenly, "look." She turned, holding it up for them to see. It was here, behind the photograph of Papa. But I don't understand. I was sure I left it in my desk before assembly. And now, oh, Alice, what will everyone say?" "You are an idiot, Anastasia, accusing people of stealing things before you've even looked for them properly," said Alice, who had heard all about the incident in the classroom from Sally. "I bet you'd lose your own mother on end of term speech day given half a chance." "But I was sure I left it in my desk. I never been so sure. I "Oh, never mind," Alice said sensibly. "You'll have to own up to Miss Winifred in the morning, and then it will all be forgotten. Now come on, or we'll miss the auditions." "I don't think I'll come," Anastasia said dejectedly. "You know how much you want a part in the play," said Alice. "Do you like acting?" Edie asked Anastasia. "Does she just?" Alice answered for her. "We read a play of Alice's adventures in Wonderland before half term, and you should have heard her Mad Hatter." Anastasia smiled and changed her expression into one of comic anxiety. She tapped Edie on the arm like a fussy old man before taking her watch from her wrist and shaking it up and down. "It's gone horribly wrong," she said in a quavering voice. "You should never butter a watch with a bread knife. Some crumbs must have gotten in it at the same time. And by the way, if you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him." "See what I mean?" said Alice to Edie, smiling. Anastasia made a gesture as if doffing a hat, then switched back into being herself as suddenly as she had changed into being the Mad Hatter. Edie followed them from the dormitory, feeling she had learned something interesting. Anastasia clearly loved acting, and just from the few lines she had flung out, Edie could see that she was very good at it. But she didn't suppose that was what Sally had meant when she had called her a drama queen. Was it possible that Anastasia had been causing all this fuss simply to create a dramatic role for herself? There had certainly been a sense of drama in the classroom this morning. But then Edie thought of Anastasia's face when she had found the bird on her chest of drawers. There had been something fearful in her expression, which Edie could not believe she was putting on. Hmm. Chapter 10, Striking Down. A notice on the door of the common room announced that this year's play was to be The Merchant of Venice, directed by Helen Grayling, the head girl. "Shakespeare," Alice groaned. "It's a wonderful play," Anastasia said, her eyes shining. "Papa took me to see it in Stratford last year." "What's it about?" Edie asked. Choosing husbands, Anastasia said knowingly. We won't all get speaking parts, Alice whispered as they went in. Some of us will just be attendants and things. But I only want a small part. I've got lacrosse matches every Saturday afternoon, so I'd miss half the rehearsals anyway. Edie had no desire to be cast as a thing. She experienced a sudden glimmer of determination which surprised her, then saw Helen sitting at the far end of the common room and felt a rush of nerves. Everyone was handed a short passage from the play and had to step up and turn to read it out loud while Helen took notes, watching with one of her amused smiles. It struck Edie that there was something detached in Helen's manner, as if she thought it were all a game that she was too grown up for. It was almost as though she had left school already and was coming back to visit. Everyone seemed much more confident than Edie, but it was Anastasia's performance that startled her. As she stepped up to the front, all her dreaminess seemed to disappear. If to do were as easy as to know what were good to do, chapels had been churches and poor men's cottages princes' palaces, she recited in her strange, resonant voice. This time there was none of the hostility Edie had noted in class. Everyone watched in admiring silence. Very good, Anastasia, Helen said with a smile when she had finished, making Anastasia blush. As soon as she stopped reading, Edie noticed she became shy again. Then Edie heard her own name being called. Just read it slowly and clearly. There's no rush, Helen said kindly, but as Edie held her page up in front of her, she was dismayed to find her hand shaking. As she read out loud, her voice sounded strange and uncertain, and she stumbled twice. Thank you, Edith, that was good, Helen said sweetly, but Edie felt sure it hadn't been, and she worried about it all evening, wondering if her reading had sounded as bad as she feared. As she lay awake after lights out, she felt a little rueful, reflecting how different her concerns were from the night before. The following afternoon, when the list cast list was pinned up outside the dining room, Edie arrived to find a large crowd of first years all searching eagerly for their names. Anastasia was standing to the side of the group, looking quietly pleased. I'm playing Portia, she said, turning to Edie, and you're playing Nerissa. That means we do most of our scenes together. Edie looked at the list in disbelief, astonished to have been given a speaking part. Anastasia's name was at the very top, so Edie supposed Portia must be the lead role. She was glad to see Anastasia happy again after her miserable morning. When she had told Miss Winifred about finding the glass bird, she had been made to stand in front of the whole class and admit her mistake. She had looked so embarrassed. Edie had found herself squirming. Who is Nerissa? Edie finally thought to ask. She's my maid, Anastasia said innocently. Edie recalled Cousin Charles's warning in the car. More secret servant than secret service. She had not much liked the idea of being Anastasia's servant in real life, but in a play it felt like a good omen. I think it will be cool to play your maid, she said, smiling. But Phoebe, who was standing nearby, gave a derisive snort. Trust you to have a maid, Anastasia. I'm surprised your father doesn't send you one from Russia. Everyone laughed, but Anastasia looked as if she had been struck, and Edie felt a flush of anger on her behalf. It's only a play, Phoebe, she said shortly. There's no need to be like that. I think Phoebe's jealous, Belinda teased. She's just a prison guard. Oh, shut up, Belinda, Phoebe said spitefully. We all know why Helen's made you a Venetian Magnifico. Because you're fat. Belinda's face crumbled. That's horrid, Rose said quietly. Oh, shut up, clinging Rose, Phoebe said tauntingly. It's a good thing Belinda's so fat. If she was any smaller, you'd smother her. Lay off, Phoebe, Edie said in disgust. But Phoebe had not finished. And we all know why you've been cast as the maid, little Edie, she sneered. It's because you're like a maid. Anyone can see you don't belong here. Then, ouch, Phoebe cried as she was silenced by a resounding slap. Everyone gasped, but Edie looked more startled than anyone. She stood staring stupidly at her hand, as if it were something quite separate from her. Edith Wilson, came a voice that made her heart turn. The man had appeared. Her face was dark red and her eyes looked even more protuberant than usual. Come here, she said. Edie walked up to her, wondering what was going to happen next. She had an unusual feeling that the whole incident had nothing to do with her, as though she were merely watching a scene in a play. What provoked this? To tell or not to tell, Edie said nothing. The other girls watched uneasily, for Miss Mannering's expression did not bode well. But then Anastasia spoke up. It wasn't Edie's fault, Miss Mannering. It was Phoebe who started it. Edie was only trying to stick up for me. Phoebe, have you anything to say? Miss Mannering asked briskly. Phoebe shook her head, nursing her cheek theatrically. I don't know what it was about, she lied. Miss Mannering looked doubtful. I suspect there was more to this altercation than meets the eye. But in this school we do not settle our differences with physical violence, Edith. You will apologize to Phoebe immediately. Edie turned to Phoebe, but when she saw Phoebe's satisfied smirk, her throat burned with anger. Edith? Edie glowered. She wasn't sorry. This time she couldn't lie. Very well. I have no option but to report this incident to Miss Fotheringay, Miss Mannering said coldly. And meanwhile, to help you reflect on your behavior, you will look up in your Bible the 29th verse of the 14th chapter of Proverbs and write it out 100 times. You will have plenty of time in which to do so. Until you have proven to me that you can control your temper, you will be gated on Saturdays. And for the rest of this week, you will go without cake at tea. The other girls looked shocked. Edie supposed that even by Miss Mannering's standards, this punishment was harsh. She burned with humiliation. She didn't care about cake or gatings. She'd be out of here soon enough. But the thought of going to see Miss Fotheringay worried her more than she cared to admit. As they filed into the dining room for tea, Edie was aware of the other girls looking at her. She sensed they all felt she had gone too far. Poor you, said Sally, sitting next to her and watching as Edie picked at her slice of buttered bread. The man's not usually as bad as that. It may be, you know, the thing I told you about, the change, but I bet she'll lift the punishments when you apologize. But Edie was still simmering. She would not apologize to Phoebe, not after the things she'd said. And if Miss Mannering wasn't usually so bad, then why had she come down on her so hard? Edie was starting to suspect the deputy headmistress had developed a particular dislike for her after the incident over the shoebox. Edie, you will apologize, won't you? Sally asked anxiously. No, Edie replied, but you must. If you don't say sorry, the man will gate you until the end of term. You've only got to say it. You don't have to mean it. Sally lowered her voice. You can just lie. Edie shook her head. Even the thought of an insincere apology was more than she could bear. Sally seemed puzzled by her refusal to give in, and when tea was over, Edie found herself walking to prep on her own. But as she was about to enter the classroom, Anastasia came hurrying up. "Thanks for sticking up for me with the man," Edie said gloomily. "That was nothing," Anastasia said, looking at her shyly. "Thank you for shutting Phoebe up. She's always going on, and sometimes I want to kill her. But, oh, Edie, I'd never have dared hit her like that." "That's because you're more sensible than me," Edie said, reflecting that it was she who had behaved like the drama queen, not Anastasia. "I don't know," Anastasia said thoughtfully. "Sometimes words have to be backed up by actions. That's what Papa says. But I'm just too much of a coward. And anyway, no one would be on my side. The others all think that because, oh, they just think it's all right to tease me." "Well, I don't think it's all right," Edie said. "But now you're going to be in trouble with Miss Fotheringay, and all because of me. I hope she isn't too cross." "Oh, I'm not worried about her, and she's certainly not going to make me apologize to Phoebe," Edie said bullishly. Anastasia looked at her with interest. "You are brave," she said. Chapter 11, Hidden Meanings. Edie might have felt less brave had she seen Miss Fotheringay's expression when Miss Mannering reported her offense. The headmistress stood resting her hand on the mantelpiece, her eyes cold as steel, not a shadow of emotion crossing her face. "If you take my advice, Caroline, you'd make her give up her part in the school play," Miss Mannering said. "Children start as they mean to go on, and if you don't bring her to heel, her behavior will get worse." "So," Miss Fotheringay murmured, "the child has a temper like her mother." "Her mother? I thought she was an orphan." "Even orphans have mothers, Diana. They just happen not to be alive." "You are saying that you know something about Edith Wilson's mother?" Miss Fotheringay shrugged. "I know something about her. Her name is, or was, Anna Carter. We were at school together." Miss Mannering looked surprised. "Wasn't she the one—" "Yes," said Miss Fotheringay abruptly. "She was the journalist who got herself killed in Moscow 11 years ago." "Really, Caroline, you make it sound as though it was her fault." "We were no longer in touch at the time of her death," Miss Fotheringay replied tersely. "I know very little about the circumstances." "What an extraordinary coincidence." "I can assure you, Diana, I knew nothing about the connection until I discovered it by chance from a photograph in the shoebox you confiscated on Edith's first night. I've had nothing to do with the family since." "Since you were accused of wanting too much that wasn't on offer?" "I don't know what you mean." "I only know what you've told me, Caroline, but I must admit that your having the child at Knight's Haddon bodes ill for—" "She has been delivered to my care," Miss Fotheringay returned sharply. "I did not seek her out." "All the more reason for you to resist the temptation to revisit the past. You have always maintained that boarding schools should provide every child with a clean slate." Miss Fotheringay did not reply. She turned and stoked the fire with a pair of brass tongs. "I am due to take lower school prep," Miss Mannering said with sudden briskness. "I assume you will send for the child." Miss Fotheringay hesitated. "Of course," she said quietly. "Send her to me at 6. Miss Fotheringay waited until the door had clicked shut behind Miss Mannering before crossing the room and running a hand along the secret compartment in her bookshelf. She took out a black box, which she placed on her desk, and proceeded to open carefully, drawing out a faded letter from inside. As she unfolded it, her mouth hardened. It was her last communication from Anna Carter, written 6 weeks before Edith was born. Miss Fotheringay turned by force of habit to the second page and read again the hate-fueled words that had haunted her for 11 years. Leave me alone. This child has nothing to do with you. Well, we'll see about that, Miss Fotheringay whispered, returning the letter to its box. Edith was in prep when the summons came. Edith Wilson, Miss Mannering said, barely looking up from her grading, you are to report to Miss Fotheringay. Edie packed away her things, aware of everyone staring at her. By now, there could not be a single girl in the whole school who did not know she had slapped Phoebe, and as she walked out of the classroom, something in their watching faces told her she should fear the worst. When she knocked on Miss Fotheringay's door, her hand was shaking. Come in, said a familiar voice from inside. Miss Fotheringay was sitting at her desk with the shoebox placed in front of her. The fire was lit, but there was no tea this time and no cat. I gather that you and Phoebe Phillips have had a difference of opinion, Edith, Miss Fotheringay said, steering her to the sofa. Perhaps you would like to tell me what happened. Edie flushed. She had felt hot and angry all afternoon, but now she could hardly remember what Phoebe had said. In her mind, the whole drama had been reduced to one single scene, that of her arm lashing toward Phoebe's face and the smack that had silenced the whole corridor. I slapped her, she mumbled. Yes, I gather that much from Miss Mannering, but I am interested to know why. I am assuming you don't slap people every time you have an argument, Edith. Or perhaps you do. Miss Fotheringay seemed interested, as if they were discussing a painting or a poem they had both read. There was no reproof in her voice. I would like to know what Phoebe did to upset you, Edith, she went on. I imagine there must have been some provocation. Phoebe was being nasty to Anastasia, Edie replied at last, squirming at how babyish the whole affair now sounded. She said she was stuck up and that she should have her own maid, and she said that I'd been cast as her maid in the play because I don't belong here. Background trouble, Miss Fotheringay surmised in a tone of sudden impatience. What is the matter with you all? Can't you see the Knight's Haddon is a chance to leave your old identities behind? I had put this hour aside to teach you some Latin, not to read you the riot act on losing your temper. I view it as an unwelcome change to my timetable. Miss Fotheringay paused, and Edie wondered if the riot act was over or if it was about to begin. What is the point, Edith, of learning Latin? The headmistress asked. So you can speak it, Edie ventured. Miss Fotheringay smiled. No one speaks Latin, Edith, but those who know Latin speak their own language better. Words like trees have roots, and in English the roots are often Latin. Unless you can dig to the roots, you will often mislay a word's true meaning. Edie frowned, not sure she was quite following, but there was something conspiratorial in Miss Fotheringay's tone that made her listen very closely. Let us take the word temper, Miss Fotheringay went on. It comes from the Latin verb temperare, meaning to moderate. We also have the verb temper, meaning to soften, and yet you probably think of temper as something hard and uncontrollable. Edie nodded shyly. You need to keep both meanings in mind, Edith. You will learn to temper your temper, and you will, of course, apologize to Phoebe. Edie did not protest. Meanwhile, Miss Mannering has suggested that I exclude you from the play. Edie's face fell. But under the circumstances, Miss Fotheringay smiled, I feel that might be a little severe. Tell me, she added, as though the thought had only just struck her, did Miss Mannering take any action herself? Edie nodded. She's gated me on Saturday afternoons, and I'm not allowed cake at tea time, and I have to write out the 29th verse of the 14th chapter of Proverbs 100 times. I see, Miss Fotheringay said. I'm not sure I remember the 29th verse of the 14th chapter of Proverbs. Perhaps you could remind me. Edie could, for she had already written it out 50 times during prep. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. She recited in a bold, unhappy voice. Very apt, Miss Fotheringay murmured. Are you hungry? She asked, and without waiting for an answer, she stood up and disappeared through a small internal door at the back of her study. She returned with a tray laid with a teapot and the remains of a marbled cake. You might as well eat some now, if Miss Mannering intends to starve you, she said, cutting Edie a large slice. Edie was honored to be part of this plot. She wondered if Miss Fotheringay had baked the cake herself, and who had eaten the rest of it. Now, Miss Fotheringay said briskly, Latin. She placed the book in Edith's lap and pointed to a line at the top of the page. Read that. The strangeness of the words brought a flush of panic to Edie's face. Fasten, facebos do, she stammered. Fas est et ab post docere, Miss Fotheringay corrected her. Right, it is to be taught even by the enemy. You will do well to remember those words. Edith, during your time at Knight's Haddon, although I hope you do not consider yourself to have any enemies among my staff. Edie thought of the man and was startled to realize her thoughts were being read. If you wish to establish better relations with Miss Mannering, Edith, I would advise you to prove yourself in class, Miss Fotheringay said. Edie chewed her cheeks. Despite her reservations about the man, she had enjoyed her first history lesson. The only history Babka had ever taught her had been to do with Poland. Her grandmother had remembered her country's historic sufferings bitterly, banging her fist on the kitchen table while recounting the wickedness of the Nazis and the communists. Miss Mannering's lessons were much more fun. She talked about the past as an exciting story that had to be pieced together from clues, and Edie always found herself wanting to know more. But she hadn't yet put her hand up to ask a question, suspecting how much the man disliked her. Knight's Haddon might seem strict in comparison with a day school, Edith, but we all want to help you settle in, Miss Fotheringay said. Edie looked guarded, feeling guilty about having so much to hide. I am always here if you need to talk, Miss Fotheringay added, and Edie felt even worse. It was almost a relief when they returned to Latin, but when Edie opened her pencil case and took out her brown fountain pen, she noticed Miss Fotheringay's eyes fixed on it. It belonged to my mother, Edie said awkwardly, sensing an explanation was required. It's got her initials on it, ALC, or at least they used to be her initials before she got married and became a W. She wondered if Miss Fotheringay was going to say that tortoiseshell fountain pens engraved with parents' initials were against the school rules, for she was giving it very close attention. I don't have many things belonging to my mother, she heard herself saying instead. My parents lived abroad, and after they were After they died, everything got left behind. There aren't even many photographs left, and I haven't got any of my mother's letters or Edie stopped. She tended never to discuss these things, and she wondered if Miss Fotheringay would show impatience, as Babcock would have done. But Miss Fotheringay had put the Latin books to one side. "How much do you know about your mother?" she asked. "Not as much as I would like. Babcock is my father's mother, and she never really talks about my mother. Nor does Aunt Sophia, even though she was her sister. And I don't even know who her friends were." Edie frowned. Maybe she didn't have many. She was a war correspondent, so she was always traveling. But then sometimes I wonder if... "What?" Miss Fotheringay prompted. "Sometimes I wonder if there are things Babcock doesn't want me to know." Miss Fotheringay was silent a moment as she sat examining a gold ring on her right hand. "What about your cousin Charles?" she asked eventually. "Have you talked to him about your mother?" "He says he hardly remembers her," Edie said. "He saw her a bit as a child, I think, but not after she grew up. They're not close cousins. He'd never even met me before he came to supper at Aunt Sophia's." "Had he not?" Miss Fotheringay paused, as if to take this in. "How do you get on with him?" she asked unexpectedly. Edie hesitated. Cousin Charles had warned her never to trust anyone, but she thought with a sudden longing what a relief it would be to tell Miss Fotheringay the truth, that his pretense at being a loving guardian was all a sham, and that she wasn't really his ward, but the prince's plant. Miss Fotheringay, as if anticipating a confession, quietly got up and went to stand by the window. "Cousin Charles, he's not..." "Oh, he's all right," Edie said hurriedly. A bell clanged, signaling the end of prep. Miss Fotheringay returned, holding the shoebox. Edie knew, as it was handed back to her, that its entire contents had been gone through. How dare she? But her silent protest was insincere. Edie didn't care. As she looked up into her headmistress's eyes, she was aware of some force she had no will to resist. "I have removed the telephone, as I'm sure you know. They are strictly forbidden." "I know. I'm sorry. It was just..." "Everyone tries it in the beginning," Miss Fotheringay said dismissively. "No one succeeds. You'll find in the end that it's a relief not to be in touch with the outside world. Knight's Haddon is your world now, Edith. So long as you're here in my care, there is no other." Okay, my friends, so that is the end of chapter 11, and I'm going to stop there and leave it up to you all to decide if you want to know the rest of the story. It's The Girl with the Glass Bird by Esme Kerr. You can check it out at your local library if you want to hear the rest. And I thank you so much for listening. I guess we can pick up one of the babies before we go. We've got little Oink here who fell asleep during the story. Isn't he cute? Just look at him. The little sweet piggy Oink. I don't know if he liked the story so much that he fell asleep, or if it was so uninteresting that he fell asleep. I hope the story was interesting enough for you all, and that it kept your mind ablaze for more. So that's little Oink there. Isn't he so sweet? Little Oinky. Let's see, let's lay him here in front of Raven. Thank you, you guys. Thank you, thank you. Okay, now there's my water bottle. I needed a little bit of water. And we'll get Raven. One sleeping baby and one awake baby. Okay, Raven, little darling, let's show your little sweet face to everyone. You're all wondering what was going on with the babies. There she is. She happily listened to the story. Being that she's a girl, she was excited to hear about boarding school and the incidents going on with Edie and Anastasia. Little sweet Raven, that's her. There we are. Well, okay, friends, I think that's going to be it. Thank you so much for always sticking out with the stories with us here. I hope you enjoyed it. And that will end this night session, this night owl session. And we'll chat with you next time. Until the next video, friends. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Tamara. Good night, everyone. Good night.